What if your CEO decided to step down and, however improbable, put you in charge to move the company forward? All right. Maybe you haven't daydreamed that scenario before, but do you know what you would do if it happened? If you don't, that's where visioning and the creative process comes in. But if you do know what you would do, why haven't you done something about it? My guess is it either has something to do with not knowing how to get your leaders on board with adopting change, and/or some fears that are getting in your way. In this video, we're going to talk about tools for removing the barriers that block leaders from adopting change. And kudos to you if you're someone who has the courage to try. This video is not going to be a video about manipulation because sustainable organizations aren't built that way. Now, the question I'm asking, how do I get leaders to adopt a change? Funny enough, those same leaders are usually asking the same question. How do I get my team to adopt the change? And here's a secret. Leaders want to say yes. It's just that we don't usually give them a path to yes. There are two things you need to do to help guide your leaders to adopt a change. One, shift their inner condition to be able to adopt the change that they are seeking, and be sure to stick around to see what type of shift I'm talking about. And two, you need evidence that's aligned with the shift, and I have a specific tool that you can use for that. So, number one, shift their inner condition. First, you've heard me say it before, to make a change happen, what matters most is your inner condition, and the same is true for your leaders. When you're a new employee, you're driven to want to make progress. And when you're a manager, your motivation starts to shift to manage your risk to continue your rise in the organization. And when you're a senior leader, risk aversion tends to reach its peak. So in order to adopt change, you should want to minimize your leader's risk aversion. Now we know from prospect theory that the opportunity has to outweigh the risk by at least 2 times. So assuming that's true, what you want to do is increase their feelings of motivation for opportunity and desire, and downplay feelings of comfort and liking in the here and now. And the difference physiologically is the neuromodulator dopamine for wanting versus here and now neuromodulators in the brain such as serotonin and oxytocin for liking. Dopamine is responsible for wanting, for feelings of pleasure and reward, but really feelings of motivation and seeking, and is responsible for our ability to drive abstract thinking, especially as it pertains to progress. So how do you increase dopamine and make your leaders want to adopt change? Well, research shows that the introduction of threats make people more conservative, but when you increase imagination, they become more open. So the first step for adopting change is to ensure it does not create an increase in threat, but rather reduce feelings of vulnerability, which will suppress fear of loss, and the here and now neuromodulators, which will allow dopamine, the agent of change, to switch on and play a larger role. You can see more about minimizing threats in this video here. Novelty and new learning fuels creativity, vision, and imagination, as you might expect. So be someone who shares new learning and novel things in bite-sized ways that are related to the change that they're seeking, and be a facilitator for their imagination. Don't give them the answers. Remove barriers and give them new insights that allows them the ability to think and create for themselves in ways that increases their dopamine. And number 2, use evidence aligned with your shift. Can you win a race with 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot on the brake? Of course not. And you'll blow your engine trying. And that's what it's like for most of us most of the time. One of the tools I use for generating evidence for adopting change is the Immunity to Change X-ray by Robert Kegan. And the reason why is because it exposes what your hidden commitments are that are keeping you from adopting change. And once you know your hidden commitments, we can generate assumptions to test, not unlike how we create assumptions to test in design thinking. But here's the thing, by testing your assumptions, you get actual evidence of whether or not it makes sense to put a foot on the gas or a foot on the brake. Shift your leader's inner condition by minimizing threats and increasing imagination, and test assumptions to provide evidence aligned with the shift for adopting change. Most of the information from today's video comes from 2 books, The Molecule of More by Daniel Lieberman and Michael Long, and Immunity to Change by Robert Kegan and Lisa Laskow-Lahey. And now that you know this, do me a favor, y'all. Go win the day. Sincerely, your #1 sidekick. All right.